Not all cruises need to break the bank. It's not always having to live in the lap of luxury. There are several cost-saving steps you can take to have a fantastic cruise experience. We're going to break down these cost-saving tips today on Seymour Seas. I have been working with several new clients that are either first-time cruisers or have a small group traveling with them that are first-time cruisers and also have a very limited budget. After finding out what they are looking for in their cruise, we discuss a lot of different options to reduce costs when looking at their particular booking. Now, the title of this video suggests that I'm going to talk about price as well as value. Now, value propositions are very personal, and I'm going to make sure that I leave that up to you. Now, if you do need the drink package, then by all means, get the drink package. If you want a larger stateroom or cabin and you want to go with a suite, absolutely go with a suite. There are still a lot of cost-saving measures that you can take when you're booking your cruise. We're going to break all of that down right after this. Hi everyone and welcome. If you are new here, I am Doug and this is Seymour Seas, your cruise tips and planning channel where I hope to help you and your family pick, plan, and enjoy and now book your next cruise vacation. If you find this video helpful in any way, please do give it that thumbs up. And as always, please consider subscribing. It is free to you, but means the world to me. It allows me to bring you new and continued content just like this. So thank you so much for subscribing. And now let's get started. Cruise bookings and demand are probably at some of the highest levels that we have ever seen in the industry. So my number one recommendation for you is to book early. Think 1, maybe 2 years out, if not more. Now, the reason for this is that these prices are probably going to be the least expensive that you're going to find while demand is so high. There's been this perception that you can book at the last minute and get a great price. That is not happening right now. When you book early and you get this really great rate and price, one of the things that you can do is register to watch that cruise price as your cruise gets closer. Two of the best sites that you can register on is cruisewatch.com and cruisecritic.com. They both have exceptional tools that allow you to track the price of your particular cabin category as your cruise approaches. I would definitely work with a very knowledgeable travel advisor to make sure that they know how to work all of these changes. Also, please avoid inaugural cruises for that early booking because these are going to be very high prices, and also avoid any type of theme or chartered cruisers due to the fact that the price drops on these are very, very unlikely and that these are normally higher level cruise prices than what you would get normally on that same ship for that same itinerary. So my number 2 recommendation and tip for you is to look at repositioning cruises. These are normally much lower priced and provide you with a lengthy cruise at a very inexpensive daily rate. Now, some of these might consist of, say, the Alaskan season is coming to a close. You can get a repositioning cruise that is going to go from the Alaska season down to the Caribbean season. So you're going to go through the West Coast, see some Mexico, go through the Panama Canal, do the Southern Caribbean, and end up in Miami or Fort Lauderdale. That is absolutely an amazing cruise. On the reverse side of that, you might be ending the Caribbean season and have the opportunity to transition from the Caribbean season all the way up to Seattle or Vancouver for the Alaska season, doing the reverse route. One more option, all of these ships that are located in the Mediterranean for the summer season are now coming down to the fall and winter to the Caribbean. You might have a wonderful opportunity to go from Barcelona or even Southampton through the Caribbean down to Fort Lauderdale or Miami and even San Juan and other islands now that are home ports to have an absolutely fantastic cruise at sea on an absolutely fantastic ship for a great rate. Another tip I have for you to reduce the overall cost of your cruise is to consider sailing during off-peak times as well as off-season. Now, off-peak would be don't sail on the national school holidays, during Christmas, during Thanksgiving, during the spring break time frames. And we used to do that with John being a teacher. We'd always sail during spring break, and the prices are always higher during that time. Also, consider sailing possibly the Caribbean during the summer or the fall. In the summer, most of the cruise lines have left the Caribbean, with only a few continuing to stay there year-round. Royal Caribbean, Virgin Voyages, Celebrity, and a few others will be there year-round, and they have great rates during the summer and even more so in the early fall. This is because the early fall is the height of hurricane season. Now, we live in South Florida, and we have traveled in August and September several times, and not once have we had a cruise affected by a hurricane. Knock on wood. It is a chance that you take, but you can grab some great deals if you're willing to take the risk. Now, otherwise, you might want to consider sailing at the beginning or the end of a season. Take Alaska, for example. Alaska's season is normally May through September, and so you might want to consider and look at a May sailing, but one of the things to really research prior to making your final booking is make sure that those excursions that you're looking to take are going to be operating early in the season in May. The same thing with with September or the end of September in Alaska. You're going to find some better cruise rates, but you do want to make sure that those excursions are still operating. Another cost-cutting measure that you can consider is actually taking a shorter cruise. Everybody loves to take a 7-night cruise, and that is pretty much the norm, but you'd be surprised at the amount of options that you can find that have 3, 4, and even 5-night cruises. A lot of this happens in the Caribbean, and you can always find a cruise to one of the private islands and then maybe somewhere in the Bahamas or down to Key West. And these are excellent options. One thing that you want to take a look at, though, is the cost per night per person. Now, when you take a look at that, you may find that this 4-night cruise is actually more per night than what it would be on a 7-night cruise. That 4 or 5-night cruise also might be more expensive or even the same price as that 7-night. So take a look at those and make sure that you are looking at those objectively. Another way to find some of these shorter cruises are for the itinerary adjustment cruises. For instance, if you have a couple of larger ships coming in from the Mediterranean to begin their Caribbean season, many times they always do a 7-night cruise, but to adjust to the new week format, Sometimes there are what some people would call a repositioning cruise, where they'll have a 3-night or a 4-night just to get them into that 7-night repetitive schedule. Many times, these itinerary adjustment cruises for a 3 or 4-night do have a lot of special pricing associated with them as well. Another great way to save money when choosing a cruise is to go with a guaranteed stateroom. Now, a guaranteed stateroom is a stateroom in any category where you don't get to choose the location of the stateroom. The cruise line will assign that to you a few weeks before your cruise. Now, this can be an inside stateroom with no windows, an ocean view that might have a porthole or a large window, and then balconies and suites as well. If you choose a guaranteed stateroom, you're always going to pay less, and you're going to get that level category of stateroom or better. Now, I do have a video on the different types and categories of staterooms that you may want to watch right here when you have finished this one, and I'll leave a link below. Yet another additional tip is to make sure that, if possible, you select a cruise port that is close to home where you can drive to the port the same day. Not everybody is as fortunate as we are here in South Florida, being able to drive to Fort Lauderdale, Port Everglades, Port of Miami, and then even just a couple hours up the coast to Port Canaveral. So we tend to take a look at cruises out of local ports and then try to figure out any ways that we can to offset the parking charges, either parking off-site or having a friend, neighbor, or family member take us to the port and possibly even pick us up. We normally now do Ubers to Port Everglades based on the fact that it is normally cheaper for us to do that than to park off-site for any cruises more than 5 or 6 days. A very popular trend right now in the cruise line industry is to bundle all of your additional costs into the base cruise fare. This includes things like the drink package as well as Wi-Fi. Now, if you are looking at the drink package, the normal rule of thumb is if you're going to be consuming 6 to 7 drinks per day, which includes alcohol, beer, wine, as well as specialty coffees and bottled water, anything that is not an included beverage, those will be covered under the drink package. Both adults in the room need to buy the same level of drink package, so this can become very, very costly, especially if only one of the adults is actually going to be drinking. The same thing happens with Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi costs are getting more and more expensive, and as they roll these into the base price, you need to take into consideration whether or not you're going to need it or take advantage of it. So take a look at what this bundled price actually is compared to the cruise only fare. We've begun not doing the all-inclusive type approach and the bundled pricing, whereas if I'm having a few glasses of wine, I'll do that a la carte, and then for Wi-Fi, we may just get one Wi-Fi package for 2 devices, and that is normally much, much less expensive than if you are going to be doing the all-inclusive. My last tip for you for cutting cost when booking a cruise is to consider the mass market cruise lines. These are cruise lines like Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Norwegian, and MSC. These cruise lines normally have a number of different megaships in their fleet, and they're trying to fill these up as quickly as possible. So if you remember that number 1 tip, booking early, these are going to have lots of different deals to fill this up as quickly as possible. So take a look at the mass market lines with their mega ships, and because they have so many ships in their fleet, you may also want to consider some of their older ships. These are still very large ships that have been refurbished 2, 3, maybe 4 times, and there's going to be exceptional deals on these older ships. So depending on what you're needing for your cruise, if you take a look at one of those older, more intimate ships, it might be a perfect fit for you. Those are my top 8 tips for cutting costs when looking, planning, and booking your next cruise vacation. I'm sure you guys have lots of your own cost-cutting tips, so I'd love to hear about them, so please leave them in the comments below. If you found this video helpful in any way, please do give it that thumbs up, and as always, please subscribe to the channel. It really does mean the world to me, and it allows me to continue to make additional content for you and the entire cruise community. I have lots of different content on this site, so please take a look at either of these videos next. Thanks so much for showing up today, and as always, I'll see you again soon.